So we're going to have the bigger discussion 5. So first off, before we get started, let me say a heartfelt thank you to Lewis and NMSDC for hosting the bigger discussion 5, and thank you. This is how many of you have ever seen the bigger discussion on YouTube? All right, for the rest of you, go out on YouTube and look. There's 70,000 other people that saw something that you didn't. So, but I would like to again. The last 4 bigger discussions have been all hosted in New Orleans. So, on behalf of Alvin O. Williams, is he in here? Alvin O., stand up, please. Stand up, please. All right, Alvin. Where's Fela Meyer? Fela Meyer, stand up. Stand up. Okay, stand. For those of you that don't know, that was Fela standing up. But on behalf of, they are also the co-founders of the bigger discussion. So again, a heartfelt thank you to NMSDC for doing this. And the rumors are, if it goes really well, that there could be another bigger discussion at the national conferences of WBENC, SVBDC, or NGLCC. Just throwing out a little, there's a possibility, there's a possibility. If it goes bad, there won't be, obviously. And we will blame that on the moderator. Our first bigger discussion was in 2012, and we had our first African-American president, Barack Obama, and I remember asking Lewis, with our first African-American president, was the country changing that much that, maybe we don't even need supplier diversity. Maybe we are becoming a race-neutral country. And now, for those of you that may not have noticed, we have another president. And I would like to ask, with our new president, how do you think that will affect supplier diversity, or is it even still needed? Lewis?
Thank you. Yeah.
And remember, you are interim, so be careful with your answer.
Remember, I'm interim, so I can say what I want to say. No. No. First of all, thank all of you for being here at NMSDC. We appreciate it. Thank you for the bigger discussion. In transparency, Fela was kind enough. This is an event she was going to hold in New Orleans yet again, and she was kind enough to shift her dates in order so we could have it here. And it was important to all of us at NMSDC, really, because we are, and it does, I was being a little flippant about it, I can say what I'm saying, interim, but all of us are trying to make sure we're turning a page and really being a better partner to everyone. And it takes that needs to be reciprocated. And so she was gracious enough to do that for us. And so we're very happy to host it here. So please give her a round of applause again. And so, Scott, you asked that question a number of years ago, was it even needed? I thought it was a poor question then. I think it's a poor question now, because, the politics of the country, Democrat or Republican, conservative or liberal, don't really, deal with the bottom line reality that diverse businesses are dealing with every day, right? Enterprises are going to last decades, and so they're going to be noise. Sometimes you like the noise, it's beautiful music. Sometimes the noise hurts your ears, but that noise from politics, wherever your point of view is always going to be there. But the commitment of this country going forward, the country's getting blacker and browner, and the economic vitality of this country is going to solely be determined on how well these businesses that have not been part of the system are going to be in the system. So whether, elections or not, it's needed until we start to make sure that these businesses are participating in levels commensurate where they are in the population.
But I'd like to invite Pam.
Sure, Scott. So I will. I will be interim if I say what I really think. So instead, I'll tell you a story. I was almost afraid to take a job at WBENC because it was located in Washington, D.C. I'm not a huge fan of politics, and I am glad we live in a relatively free country where you can relatively say what you want to and that sort of thing. I unfortunately grew up in the South, so I'm pretty hypersensitive to some things other people should be sensitive to, right? And I've never much really cared who the president was. I will be honest with you and tell you that I've been a Republican my entire life. But the first time I ever voted Democrat was when Obama ran the first time. And I did it not because I liked Obama. It was because Sarah Palin was not getting near that White House, okay? So, so I champion women. I champion all of you, right? But it's about being qualified. She wasn't qualified. I was primarily Republican to the extent that I wanted to pay any attention to it. And so I really didn't know much about him. So I got to know a lot more. And the second time, not only did I purposefully vote for him, but I tried to influence other people to vote for him, okay? And again, as a lifelong Republican, he was by far the most qualified. Had we had the opportunity to vote for him for a third time, I would have done that as well. So unfortunately, we didn't have that as an option. I would not have voted for Hillary because she was the best qualified or because she was a woman, right? I would have voted for Hillary because I would not have let Trump near the White House. And so I'm just going to be honest about that. I think that what we all have to do, especially in the roles that we play, is we can't be part of tearing each other down, even though I said what I just said. And I do say it with my friends every single chance I get. But I do think that every one of us needs to step up and be the leader that we are. And regardless of who is in the White House, we have to extend the understanding branch to each other. Okay, so one of the reasons that I'm here, I am very supportive of Lewis. I'm very supportive of NMSDC. I'm supportive of my partners from the veteran organization, as well as the LGBT community, as well as Jill and Pat from USBLN. And I don't know if the Pan Asian organization is here, but I am supportive of that organization. So again, I think that each of us should do what we can do, right, to help each other and to understand what we're going through. It doesn't have to matter a lot about who it is, except that I do absolutely agree with you that the person who is taking up all the airtime on TV is causing other people who are not as educated as we all are to do things that should never be allowed. That would be my answer.
Keith, I know you got something.
Well, actually, I probably have a little different point of view because as I was watching the cabinet be appointed, and I thought of all these billionaires, it dawned on me how many of us have ever talked to them about their supplier diversity? What are their efforts? Where is the Trump Association or Trump Incorporated at this meeting? Where are their buyers? And you start talking to Ross was here, he's a multi-billionaire. So if I start looking at the politics of all of this, obviously as a veteran, I have some very strong patriotic points of view, and I don't deny that. And I have a lot of issues with what the man says and does. But forget that for half a moment, because I really believe the most important thing that we can do is let them know of the message. And I believe that that message is what Pam just said. We're all in this together. Let's be strong together, because I'd really like to sit down with the man and say, hey, who are you buying what from? How many minority companies or veteran companies? I'd really like talking about veteran companies, but I'll share the wealth. So yeah, actually, I really would like to sit down and talk to these business people who are now in power to see what we can do to collectively enforce what we're doing. So I'm gonna leave the rest of the politics alone.
Well, knowing what a prolific consumer of media the president is, if this is on YouTube, I'm sure I'll be wacky Justin Nelson by the end of the day. He'll have a new nickname of some sort. But probably other people that call me that already. So I just want to start out by saying thanks for the invitation to be here. And it is really special to be at the NMSDC for us. It is my first time ever at this meeting. And Lewis had reached out, I guess it was maybe a month ago we spoke, for a good long time. And we agreed to be transparent and collaborative. And I think to answer your question, Scott, about what this administration is doing to supplier diversity or what it's not doing for supplier diversity, I think is doing anything but being collaborative. You know, many of us sit on the SBA's Council on Underserved Communities. We haven't met once. I have not met once with the SBA administrator, who, by the way, from my politics side of things, was actually a Republican I could agree with. She was pro-marriage, pro-employment non-discrimination, but still can't break out of what some of the other folks within the administration view as top priorities. So I think they are a danger to what we do. I think what we have to do is continue to work together. We have to present a united front, because when that happens, you see corporations rallying. You know, they're not here. You know, and the elephant in the room, there's been some changes here, everybody, you know that. But the corporations still showed up to be here and to be supportive. They were at WBENC, they were at USBLN, they were at NGLCC, they're at USPAC. And that's what we have to do, because when we work together as organizations, when our collective stakeholders, and many of you are stakeholders of multiple organizations, when you see us working together and representing a united front for diverse-owned businesses, you support us, and that support makes a difference. I've had the displeasure of living in DC for 25 years, and I have never seen it more dysfunctional. And the leaders are in this room. The leaders are at this conference. The leaders are in our boardrooms and in our small businesses. And if we can keep that on track, I think we're going to be able to get through the next 4 years.
So I need to take a step back, because I am such a huge fan of each one of these leaders of their organizations that I just jumped in and didn't even say who these people are, in case everybody doesn't know who they are. So let me take a step back and say we have Lewis Green, NMSDC National Minority Supplier Development Council, Pam Prince Eason, WBENC, Women's Business Enterprise National Council, Keith King, and I want to make sure and get your acronym right, because I was going to just go SVBDC, but that is the, that is the National Veterans Business Development Council.
Yes.
But did you see how good I was with SVBDC? And then we've got Justin Nelson with the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce. So.
Scott?
Yeah, please,
may I ask
dive in
for
there.
Indulgence for a moment. Something that
Absolutely.
I'd like to do, and if you will indulge me. Can I ask for the veterans in the room to please stand up? If you can stand, would you please stand up and be recognized? I'd like to thank my fellow veterans. Thank you, Scott.
And we all thank you for your service.
So all of you have been in this industry for quite a while in one form or fashion, either running your organization or supporting organization, corporate America, running councils. So if you could wind the clock back, knowing all that you know now, and could start these organizations all over again, what is the one thing that you would do different or that you would change? And being that I am originally from the South, I will go ladies first this time.
I don't think this will be real popular, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think that everything that is done to develop small business is focused around what we refer to, but everyone refers to it slightly differently, our core, right? So that C is certification. I would love to see us be able to come together to have a certification hub so that you could access the data, et cetera. Keeping in mind, thank you for those claps, but what that would mean is in order to keep everyone whole and to keep us able to do the rest of the core, there would have to be some commitment to helping these organizations be fortified well enough and sustained well enough, right? So if we could use technology to its maximum to do the certification aspects of that, and your funds would be available to us to represent our constituencies with what I call the O, the R, and the E of CORE, which is opportunities, making sure that every single small business out there has a way to find the opportunities that exist in every one of your companies, whether that's you as a corporation, that's you as an MBE, a WBE, an LGBTBE, a veteran-owned business, et cetera. So, and Adobe, that's the one that I love to say, the disabled organization. So, I'd love to see that we could do that. Again, most of us also have an affiliate then in various states that are part of doing that process. I'd love to see them really turned in to the educational arm and the matchmaking arm and the part that really brings value so that every one of you, when you go back in your own company, could say, this is the value add I get to being part of this consortium. That would be what I would love to see. The R is about resources. Many of you turn to every single one of us and you fund business plan development. You fund this, that, and the other. Some of those things don't have to matter what our particular constituency is. Some of them do. We all know there's differences. And that's what I wish each of us were getting paid for, was to focus on the part that we need to champion and be able to come together on the other parts. If I ideally could have it.
And, I mean, that's a great answer. So she stole a bit of my thunder. So let me talk about two things. One, you talked about, if you could rewind the clock, and with hindsight being 2020, one of the things that's a pain point, I think, for a lot of people, not always expressed by NMSDC, but it might be what some people react to, what some people perceive to be our culture is. What this started as minority business development. This field that is now morphed into supplier diversity started as minority business development. Started because of decades of discrimination, of free labor by African Americans and others, by laws meant to economically harm us and build up the wealth of this nation. This was a little token to help try to make things whole. And the promise of that was never fully met, but people saw the value in it and say, hey, let's expand it, right? So, it grew into, and you see the organizations here on the stage. And I think that's the balance that, I try to strike, is that as people started doing, went from minority business development to doing things with women, I wish we could have coordinated, there been some accountability. So if a firm said, hey, we have a goal of doing 7% minority spend because we're trying to meet that commitment, we're going to start to do some things with women, here's our target for that, and it's going to be in addition to, right? And we're going to do some things with veterans, and we're going to do that, and it's going to be in addition to. We're going to do things with gays. So, but the pie never grew, right? The pie stayed the same. And I think that's a pain point for a lot of businesses of color. And it caused unnecessary, I think, tension sometimes between NMSDC and the rest of things. So we could have been more intentional in partnering to make sure the pie grew as people took a concept that made sense to make it more inclusive, because everyone deserves that share of the pie, but we need to grow that pie, right? And I think, so that's number one. Number two, I think the focus on spend is a terrible metric, right? It doesn't really show a lot, right? It doesn't show a lot, right? We're minority and women and gay, we're diverse businesses in the value chain, right? We're typically on the low margin businesses that tend to go away, or we're a penny higher and a penny lower, you're gone, or the first to get disrupted by technology. What are corporations? There are corporations doing great work on developing suppliers. It doesn't register on what the metric is. I look at some folks around the room. I'm looking at you, Jason. I'm looking at a lot of people who I know. I look at things that Teresa do. People are doing things that add a great value, but the metric is spend, 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 spend. And so much of the good work ends up not really being encouraged. It's hard on the corporate side to do things that doesn't get the shiny metric on the outside, but is really meaningful work. And so I think we lost our way getting caught up in spin, and apologies to all the BDR folks. But I think we got, because...
Don't trash them just yet, we just joined.
Yeah, no. Because in fairness, and being transparent, when I was at General Electric, we weren't intentional. We had over $1 billion to spend, but we never reported it because my CEO said, this is embarrassing. It's less than 1% of what we do, but we could have been in the BDR, right? So that spend metric, I think, is weak. Right, it's a metric, but we should have been more robust. And the focus on spend, I think we lost our way.
Yeah, I'll quickly address what I would do differently. We represent lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender-owned businesses, not just gay and lesbian, as our name says. 15 years ago, when we launched, that's where we were. And if we were to launch today, we would be the LGBT Chamber. And I would just say, look out for what's coming down the pipeline. Maybe you'll hear that more often. But I want to touch a little bit on what Louis said, because I agree to a certain degree and I disagree to probably a larger degree. It is about pie. I think if we could go back and engineer an understanding that another fork doesn't mean I get less pie. It means we have to bake a bigger pie, and that's our jobs. It's our jobs to hold our shared stakeholders accountable to be helping bake that bigger pie. And it's also, I'm newer on the scene here, so I have a different perspective. I understand that, and it's not to be disrespectful of what the history or the origins are. I'm well versed in that, and I know it. But the reality is, we should be downright mad as hell that we think we should only be able to compete for this percent or that percent, or what has become such an antiquated model with federal procurement in the set-aside program. Our businesses, and I speak for everyone up here, our businesses are not just what's good enough for set-aside. And for any one of us, to ever settle for that is just not enough. And we have to challenge our corporate partners, we have to challenge government entities to be able to compete at every level. And to Pam's point about education, let us really get our suppliers ready for high growth, because they will compete in any category with any corporation. What they need is a lift to the starting line and some understanding of how they get their foot in the door and can actually do that competition. So let's think about this in terms of this pie being as big as we want to bake it. I don't ever want to take business away from another diverse-owned company. In fact, if we don't have a supplier and we have a partner that reaches out, we immediately go to one of our other partners and say, do you have anyone that's in this space? And that's the spirit that I hope we all leave with here today, that we are renewed in our commitment to doing what both of you said. And that's challenging everyone to get away from it needs to be this or that, or if we reach that threshold, our job's done, we can go home. But also that we're collaborative in the fact that it's not about forks in the pie. This pie is as big as we all want to bake it. We just have to be in the kitchen to make it happen.
So let me push back on that, because how do we bake a bigger pie for Nike? How do we bake a bigger pie for any Fortune 500 company? I think we can encourage, and I guess that's one of the things I said I wanted to make sure we should have done as us going along, is that we come together. Say, yeah, this is great. Let's make sure. And shout out to Ford, because when they came in with Keith King, they said, look, we're not going to change our WBE goals, we're not changing, but we're going to add more as we bring in the veterans. So they were very intentional, and they grew that pie. I see how corporations can make that decision. I'm not sure I get how how we can grow it. I mean, I don't know how we can make the Fortune 500 or anyone do it. I think we can be aligned as we talk about it, but I think that's up to the leadership within companies. So maybe I'm missing, how do we grow the pie? Because if you know that, we should be out there selling something else so we can grow that pie.
If I may, Scott, you and I have had that conversation. Do you mind if I jump into this here?
This is a discussion.
See, one of the things that, if I could turn the time back, 1999 is significant in the history of a veteran and veteran businesses because that's when the law was passed that created us at the federal level, us being service-disabled and veteran-owned businesses. 1999. We actually wrote the law in 97. It took us a couple of years to get it passed. My company was already up and running. I get a phone call from my guys in DC basically saying, Keith, you're the only service-disabled veteran business we know. We want you to do federal contracting. And I said, you want me to be your guinea pig? Yeah. Well, I've been taking their name in vain ever since because they had no idea what they were asking me to do, and it completely changed my company, my market, everything I ever had to do, I had to change to do federal contracting. It is an honor to do what I do. I really believe that. And my very biggest regret is I did not know about supplier diversity. I did not understand corporate standards are completely different than what happens at the federal government. And I wish that the information I had gotten back then, I could have applied it all these years earlier. And every one of our veterans, when they all stood up, I hope somebody took a quick look, because we're men, we're women, we're white, we're black, we are America. Okay, we are, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Yes, and that's a whole different conversation that I'll have sometime privately. But the fact of the matter is that being a veteran is a choice. So, to get to your question, if I may.
I'm letting that go. Being LGBT is not a choice.
I didn't say, I said veteran.
Said veteran.
You said being a veteran's a choice.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
You're a little defensive, right? I earned these hearing aids, okay?
Do you need-
So let me answer your question. Now that I've done all this, let me answer your question.
Keith, do you need both hearing aids? 'Cause
Yes, I
maybe
do.
he could borrow
I may
one.
have to give him one of mine. My point is this. We have an organization called the SBA who has targets. They have already benchmarked what the government wants corporations and our government to spend. Why don't we look at that benchmark in corporate world? If I remember right, the first SBA target, I believe, was around 15%, then it went up to 18%, it's up to 23%. Can you imagine if our corporation said, you know what, 10% is not enough, we can use the SBA as a benchmark, and we can increase that pie to 23%? I think there would be a lot more happier people in this room if we could at least engage in that conversation and saying, wait a minute, the benchmarks are here, why don't we look at them? Let's take a look at it pragmatically and say, can we in fact do it? Because one of the things I've learned along the way is indirect spend. And I've talked to some of the corporations, they're at 30, 35, 40, and even 50% with indirect. And I thought, oh my God, that's another story that needs to be told. So I think we can do a better job. I think that the information is out there. We just need to learn how to apply it. That's my point.
Pam, you want to?
I-
I'm gonna let Justin. I'm gonna let you come back to Lewis, but Pam had her hand up.
Yeah, so I do want to pause for 1 second. I think this is part of us educating each other. So one thing you do have here is two organizations that primarily do a lot of work with the government and do deal with a government set aside and a target. And so you have a certain view of the government process and the cost of doing that, et cetera. And so that target's really important. I think two of us also have the differing view that all of my experience started with corporate America before it started. So I cringe every time somebody says, let's no disrespect, Keith. I cringe every time somebody says, let's benchmark with the government, because as I see how they have handled the women-owned set-aside, which has not existed for very long, it's been done very poorly. 3 years ago, required third-party certification, 3 years in December, was put in place, and they're finally going to come out with a proposed rule at the end of that 3 years. So again, I would look across to the corporations in this room who I truly believe are changing the pace of all of us being included in the supply chain. And so I do see their spend, and they report it to me as part of a process they go through every year. And obviously, I'm not going to sit here and talk about it in great detail because that's why they show it to me, so I can assist each one of them. But the pie is getting bigger, I can tell you. Not that it's that way at every single corporation out there, but just step back and talk about the browning of America, more educated females, more recognition of the talent of the LGBT community, more inclusion of veterans, of our disabled colleagues, of the Pan-Asian area, et cetera, right? That we are changing as the United States of America, we're changing as the world. But in particular here, if a corporation wants to be competitive, if our government wants to be competitive, you need to get the best and the brightest that are out there. And you can't tell me they're all white or they're all white male. And so I really do believe that our corporations, our corporate leaders, our chief diversity officers, and quite honestly, some of the presidents and CEOs in boardrooms are truly recognizing that they have not had the right people focusing on things. You know, we're in automotive world here, right? And so as we take a look at that, the kind of vehicle that Keith might want, and that I might want, and that you might want, and that you might want, and you too, Scott, though you might be walking in those snazzy shoes. The type of vehicle that people might want is going to be very different based on whether I'm trying to take kids and grandkids someplace, whether I'm simply using it to sport around, whether I'm trying to go out and target shoot, whatever I'm trying to do, right? And so from that perspective, and that was very generic, but that when I'm running a company, right, I want the people who are the core users of those items, right, to give the input on that, because I want the baby safety strap on it and that sort of thing. And so sometimes the person who's in the job today is not the person who thinks like that about it. And as we're changing, we're all growing up, we're bringing up our children, those are the people who are going to make the decisions. So we just have to stay focused on making sure we're bringing our kids up right, that we're reflecting ourselves correctly in the community. And I do truly, truly believe that the pie is growing. I do.
Justin, go ahead.
Well, you know, I like to be right, but I like to get it right even more. So you have a get out of jail free with me anytime you want to use it. For that earlier, I'm sorry. So thank you.
You should be glad I'm not the sensitive type.
Well, I think that's what everyone came for. They wanted to know what we were going to get into up here today. So I think we're really very close in what we're talking about here. And I think, you know, to sort of answer your question a little bit, Louis, too, it's looking, you know, how can we collectively as organizations work together to challenge that and work with our partners? Our supplier diversity folks that are in the room, our procurement, you're here because you want to grow your spend. You know, that's that. And what can we do to be champions of that? And I think part of that's even just showing market statistics. How does supplier diversity relate not only to procurement, but to job performance of existing employees? What's the kind of market impact that it has? Are we trying to be job creators? Those sorts of things. And then I think the other thing, and we're doing some of this collaboration, which we hope to welcome NMSDC to at some point in the National Business Inclusion Consortium, is how can we work across diverse segments? There's absolutely no reason that an LGBTBE shouldn't be doing a strategic partnership with an MBE or with a WeBe or a veteran-owned business, or that they can't be suppliers to one another. You know, we have shared stakeholder. In fact, there are businesses that should be certified by every single one of our organizations. So I think we have to think creatively also in how we grow that pie. And I don't think we're that far off from one another on it.
So from most of your corporate member-driven organizations, if I'm correct, so is a chamber also corporate member? So what is the biggest challenge both to your constituents, your MBEs, WBEs, veteran businesses, and the biggest challenge to your corporate members? So two challenges. What's the biggest challenges to your constituents, your suppliers, and what's the biggest challenges to the people who basically finance you, your corporations? And I tell you what, we'll go with Keith this time first.
Okay. Thank you. I think the biggest challenge for us is educating our veteran businesses in the sense that when you come out of the military, it's called transition. And it's very difficult for a lot of us to take the skills that we have learned in the military and then apply a civilian term or name to them. And so what happens is in my conversations with most of our veterans, as you mentioned, they're used to the government. Okay, that's no surprise to anyone. We just spent 4 years of our life with the government. But the fact of the matter is that many of our veterans do not know what supplier diversity does, what it is, why there are friends, why there are gatekeepers, why there are champions. And that's an education problem that we're trying to deal with our veteran businesses. The next is certification. As you heard me say, you know, when the law was passed in '99, I instantly understood I'm going to be working with federal government and federal contracting. The worst advice I got was to avoid supplier diversity, go around them, and go directly to purchasing. Well, why? Because at the federal government, who am I dealing with? I'm dealing with contracting officers. There isn't a supplier diversity person per se in the government. And it becomes an education, a transition. When I have a veteran call me and he starts talking about set-asides and sole sources, and I know immediately I got a problem. Because it's like, look, let me explain this. This doesn't exist in the commercial business world. So I think that in a sense of the problem that we have at this point with our veterans is educating them that there is a completely different world, and different standards, different goals in what I call commercial or corporate worlds. In the sense of the corporations, first, thank you. God bless you for what you've done and the support. It's what I call the goodwill of the corporations. I've indicated I am a veteran. I am a Vietnam veteran, and I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I will tell you, being a Vietnam veteran was detrimental to my career. It was not a good place to be or a good time to be a veteran in this country. It simply is. Okay? I am very pleased, I'm not even sure what word to use, of how that shift in our society has changed to incorporate what I call the younger veterans. I just happen to have younger veterans in my family, like my son, my nephew, and my grandson just got out of the Army 6 months ago. So thank you for that goodwill to every corporation in this room and everyone who ever hears this. But the issue becomes the count, the names. How many of my veterans do I have that are actually fully and completely certified that I can now bring to the corporations to fill that goodwill and that orders, if you will. The thing that's happened with us, and again, it was at the advice and the directions of the corporations, was to certify all sizes. We know that the VA and the SBA always talk small. The corporation said, we want medium and large. The largest veteran business we have certified to date is just under $1 billion, 1,800 employees in 5 countries. We have one of our veteran business working with the automotive companies in this town, doing over $400 million a year. So what we need to do is get more. I understand that. I need to get more certified veterans. But again, the skills and the knowledge of our veterans coming out of the military is so exceptional. We need to get them out, get them trained, get them business, get them set up, and then we need to get them certified. But those are my 2 problems.
I would echo that, and actually right there too, our largest BE is just about $750 million. And that's also a place where we can find supply opportunities, not just for LGBT BEs, but for all diverse owned businesses is in the supply chain of our larger collective certified businesses. But that's the same thing for us. It's a chicken or the egg. Sometimes I was having a conversation, I won't name companies, but with one of the automotive companies companies today, and the question was, you don't have enough in the automotive services space. We don't have enough in the automotive services space. That's a fact. We should have more, but part of it's those businesses knowing that they're going to be welcomed into the supply chain. So if you don't have the businesses that have verbalized it and made it vocally, vocalized support for it, it's difficult to get those companies, especially in industries that are, traditionally viewed to be maybe more conservative in the manufacturing space than others in the, graphic arts or something like that. The great news is over the last few years, we've seen great diversity in our supply chain. It is not just communications, PR, and marketing. It is everything from aerospace to waste management. But finding those folks, and something that we're doing, we actually launched a task force at our conference this year to find out where aren't we that we should be, right? So you all are our corporate partners. We need to know what you're sourcing, where you're having trouble finding not just an LGBT BE, but a diverse supplier, period. And then how can we work together again to be present at some of these places where we're not? So how do we go find the supplier that you're looking for that has a diverse background, that's eligible for certification, and get them ready to come and have that conversation? So that's the big issue that we're dealing with. I think it's both sides of the equation, so my answer is really the same problem.
I think Lewis and I
Pam.
might be similar with this answer in that because of the amount of time that we've been doing the work we're doing, though clearly you have been doing this much longer, not you personally, Lewis, but the NMSDC, we're very proud of your anniversary. We just turned 20 this year, right? So we're clearly a younger organization, but I think we have a different problem, which is around scaling up. So we actually can find women-owned businesses. We can find minority-owned businesses. We have partners out there who truly want to do business with them, right? So there's not a concern from that perspective. The issue becomes if for a corporation to be competitive, and let's use someone like a retail organization, for them to be competitive, they need certain synergies to occur. Right? And I'm not talking about the cost side of that. I'm talking about being able to supply stock into stores where you need to see the same item across the United States at a minimum. And so somebody comes out and they have a great new item for a store. And they might be able to serve only one store, which clearly is small. Ideally, we've been scaling them up and they can maybe serve 100 stores. But if I'm the biggest retailer out there, I need you to serve 2,000 stores. Okay, and so the scaling up process, which would include anything from access to finance, right, to be able to float the amount of money I need to be able to float, to get things where they need to get, just the transportation and logistics to get to the places that I've never been to before. Those are all things that is, as the type of BE we are, we need some education around, right? We need resources and we need education for these opportunities. And so our issue, I believe, and I think the corporations and the WEs would say this, is we can see talent, we can see things we like, we can see things that would be great in its in state. It's how do you get it there because of scale.
So I would say to the corporate side of the equation, and as somebody who's been part of a few of these bigger discussions, we're probably honest to a fault. And sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad, but it is what it is. And before I answer that, I need to do point of personal privilege. You've heard a few of us mention US PAC. They are, yet another agency. There's only so many chairs on this stage, but Sue Allen is here. They're very much, another partner. She's back there in the back. Please acknowledge her. Yeah. She's very much, a partner in all this and very much part of this conversation. And so just wanted to make sure that we're clear on that as we go forward. Anyway. One of the things that I think we're vulnerable in is a lot of the promise that we have collectively. We can't meet all the promise where we need it to be, right? I mean, you hear some corporations who do great work with us, we gonna be, it's not just, it's not just, it's the right thing to do, right? It makes us profit. It does all that. But very few people have hard data and hard metrics that shows it really does help, GM sell additional cars, or, Cisco sell additional routers, or whatever that is. But I think I think people kind of know it at one level, but if we could start to deliver, and unlike most folks in the nonprofit space, if you're curing cancer, people, wow, that feels great. Or if you're solving hunger and that feels great. Oh, I just made a woman in $2 billion. Well, some people are happy for that, but a lot of people don't feel warm and fuzzy about somebody being a billionaire. It doesn't draw the same type of thing in a nonprofit space. And so we have this extra challenge of being able to show to the corporations why it's driving something. We're going to contribute to put this kind of money in it. We got to demonstrate that there's value. And I don't think on a consistent, being honest, I don't think on a consistent basis across every industry, we do that, right? And I think, we're going to be vulnerable at some point if we don't, because there's been so much talk about, and there's some folks who've done economic impact studies. I can't think of anyone. But,
I was about to bring him up too.
And that gets it on a macro level, but on a micro level, how do we do that? Because we need to empower our corporations about value propositions. Budgets are being cut, and lots of things happen. If there's something we can do about that, and one of the reasons I really look forward to collaborating with the people here is, you shouldn't be paying overhead for an event with me and an event with her, an event with all four of us, when we could come together and you got one bit of overhead and now we can put more into programs, right? And so while we search for ways to help the people who are advocating for our constituencies within organizations, we damn well better empower them. Give them the tools they need to be successful. When they need to go for budget asks, give them tools they have when they go into the meeting. Here's everything you need to go on a budget. Go kick ass. Here it is, right? So that's one thing on the corporate side for me. On the MBE side, it doesn't make me very popular in rooms, but I see lots and lots of business sectors that our MBEs are in that are going to hell quickly. They're going away, right? We over-index in staffing companies. They're getting ready to be blown away by changes in AI, machine learning. It's going to go away, right? And, good thing is we have corporate partners willing to help us figure that out, to how they make that transition, but it's going away. Lots of sectors, we kind of have a list right now of disruptive technologies and where our MBEs are, and it's scary. But after you're scared for about 30 seconds, you start planning to get away from the monster and find a way to kill it. So that's what's going on our end.
Right.
So now we're going to ask a couple more direct questions. So I'll start with you, Justin.
More direct.
Lovely.
In NGLCC, I think you guys just passed 1,000 certified MBEs, or LGBT BEs, sorry, all these acronyms. But I wanted to ask you, one of the things, and one of the reasons I'm a big fan of NGLCC has been your work in terms of lobbying and public policy. Talk a little bit about that, and then I'd like to say, should some of these other organizations, I'd like to hear you guys say why you don't get as involved with public policy and the lobbying side.
Thank you for that question. It is a part of what we do. We have the, pleasure and opportunity with our structure of both being the certifying body, but also the broader advocacy body. And when we talk, I'm going to give a little love over here. I know, sorry about that. A lot of people might think we only lobby on issues that are specifically related to gay rights or LGBT rights. That's not the fact. We are obviously concerned with employment non-discrimination. You know, this should be an issue for anyone in the room. If you have employees that spend upwards of 10 to 25% of their work week worrying about being discriminated against or fired, that's not only a problem if you're a social justice person. It means 25% of your employees' productivity is out the window. So as a business person, you know, that impacts you as well. So yes, we do look at that. But a lot of issues that impact businesses. You know, it's important to us to know where the tax code is. It's important to us to know about infrastructure. It's important for us to know about what's happening on the information superhighway. Net neutrality has been the bane of existence for a number of companies and organizations. And the reality is it impacts how we do business and how you as our corporate partners can do business. And we look at things a little bit differently. You know, it's almost the same connection where there's been this setup for years pitting small business against corporate America in tax negotiation or in a lot of legislation that happens at the federal, state, or local level. For the business that we're in, where it's supply chain dependent, we need to find things that are good for big business because we need you to be healthy. Because if you're not healthy, our companies can't be healthy. They can't grow. They can't scale. And so we took an early decision to be active in the public policy dialogue. I'll be quite frank. Again, this is wacky Justin talking. We have had a much lower federal profile in the last 9 months than we did the last 8 years. I do see some opportunity in the tax discussion, and certainly when we get around to infrastructure, which I don't think is going to happen this year, we certainly want to be a part of that because it's important to us, it's important to our constituents. Frankly, it's important to every single one of you here in this room, and it was a very intentional decision to go into that space, and I know some of our other partners put a premium on advocacy as well.
We have a little saying that America is really good at making veterans. We're just not very good at taking care of us. So when you start talking to me about advocacy, I became a veterans advocate in 1980. I helped create what you know today as the Vietnam Veterans of America. One of our very first issues was Agent Orange and the health. And when you bury your friends at 34, 35, or buried 5 kids with forms of cancer no one has ever seen, you know there's a problem. You don't have to be a doctor to understand this. Education. My education benefits were 1/3 of what my dad's was when he came home from World War II. 1/3. They cut 2/3 of us out. So you begin looking at what we did in the sense of our service to our country and then what we came home to. Just look at the VA. I'm sorry, but when I have my veterans in line waiting to get medical care dying because somebody doesn't have the right numbers, I have issues with that. Is that being a veteran advocate? You bet. You bet what we do in Washington, what we do in Lansing, what we do in every country, every county, and every state in this country is make sure that whenever possible that we have someone representing. Persian Gulf War. How many of you ever heard of, the Persian Gulf problems, right? My son had his first stroke at 39. And this is a very strong, young, active man who ran, coached, refereed. This was an athlete who has a stroke. Why? Unfortunately, he had a father in Vietnam and he was in the Persian Gulf. All right? So when you start looking at these kind of issues from a veteran's point of view, and you start looking at our education, you look at our medical treatment, you begin looking at all of these issues, yes, we're advocates. How do you think that law got passed in '99 that created us in the first place? It was because of my fellow veterans and what I call my friends, my advocates in DC. We got together and began lobbying. We talk about us working all together. One of the things is anybody who was in the military will tell you, the first thing you learn is to operate and work as a team. My team kept me alive in Vietnam. Well, I helped keep them alive as well. But we work as a team, so I'm used to doing that. And I will love what we're hearing and talking up here because I want to be a part of this team. And I can guarantee you, you talk to any veteran, they know what it's like to be a team member. Okay? Now, when we look at all of these things and where we are at today, I said the biggest thing, my regret is I didn't do this years ago. But I'm very proud of where we're at today, and as far as I'm concerned, where we're headed is being able to provide what we do now to these, what I call the young veterans. If my grandson wants to own a company, guess what? He now has a certification program in place that the corporations will accept and at least give him the opportunity and the access that I didn't have, that none of us had 4 years ago when we started all this. So for that, I'm very thankful and very proud. Thank you.
Oh, go ahead.
So mine's going to be a bit more technical of an answer because we are only 20 years old. At the time that we came to be, there was already the existence of women impacting public policy. They were a 501c6, and many corporations contributed to them as part of their political strategies and their public affairs strategies. And so we came to be, our mission was about certifying and developing women-owned businesses, right? And so as part of that, we are a 501c3, and we have tremendous limitations on our ability to do that type of advocacy. But we purposefully have, for every woman who is certified by WBENC, they have a basic membership in Women Impacting Public Policy. That's another partnership that we all have, WIP. And so actually, Candace and I met with them last week. We went through all of our joint strategies of things that we care about, but that we can't advocate for on our own. And so ours is actually a very technical answer. Maybe if we had started 45 years ago or something, it might have been different, but that's just how we ended up where we are today.
NMSDC started 45 years ago. Why don't you do a little bit more lobbying around?
Sorry, Lewis.
No. I think it's a fair point, and I think it is. It's a weakness, right? One of the things, at one point in time, we had an office in D.C. We used to be involved very much in, and again, when you're a 501c3, you have to be clear about what you do. But I see Beatrice, I see others who were with us when we would go to D.C. to do kind of educate legislators and other government officials about the mission that we had. That office closed, so we lost some momentum there. This may sound controversial. When Barack Obama was elected, we lost even more momentum only because folks in that administration didn't want to seem they were doing anything for minorities, right? Because that perception is burden about trying not to do anything. And so it became even more difficult to get things on the agenda because they were trying to fight this perception that there was a focus there. So that was another loss. So one of the priorities in this kind of, day 93 now since I stepped into New York, so give me some time. But we are going to get back engaged in Washington. Somebody very near and dear to us has offered us some space that we may, hopefully be able to take her up on it. And am I blowing a secret? I'm sorry.
I haven't said a thing.
And start to make sure we can educate and inform, because it is necessary that we're part of the discussion, that we do it within that context, and especially as we can get that, I was talking about that more granular data, that economic impact, when you can start talking about by district, then you start to make the case, and when you align a strategy with all of us up here, now you really have something powerful that you're going forward with in DC. So it's someplace that we haven't been for the past few years. It's something we're going to be in before the end of the year.
So we're getting ready. We're running, getting ready to close this down in a couple more minutes. So I want to ask a couple questions that I've gotten via Twitter, and these may be a little bit controversial. So one's for Lewis and one's for Pam. And Lewis, what do I say to people that say NMSDC is a black organization? And Pam, what do I say to people that say WBENC's a white woman organization? So, you hear that about NMSDC,
the narrative is it's old, black, and male, and hell, that might be me, right? But I'd say the following. If anybody's paying attention, if you see the newest businesses being certified, they're predominantly Latino, right, who's coming in, right, in our organization. You see where the growth is. After 45 years, you see some very mature, very healthy, that high-performing black businesses, and I'm unapologetic about that. That's great. That means what we were doing worked, right? That means what we were doing worked, right? We have a lot of people who've been committed to working with NMSDC over that time, whether in council levels or not. So I'm unapologetic about that. But it is clear, the future of this organization is going to be, the Latino community is going to be, younger women, probably just the opposite of me, right? Instead of old black male, young female Hispanic, right? I think that's what you see for the future. But for where we are right now, I have no apologies about it because it's the result of some hard work, and that's where we are.
So I have kind of a technical answer. Metrics matter, right? So I would say to you that if you make the comment that this is only a black organization or that we are only a women's organization, then you really haven't been paying attention, okay? And I don't mean that in any disrespectful way, but I can tell you 6 years ago, we had 3% ethnic minority women, 3%. My board chair is here. She can attest to you, as is most of my executive committee I see. We are 33% ethnic minority now, okay? So, again, this organization is about delivering for women-owned businesses, whether they're vets, whether they're LGBT, whether they're disabled, whether they're Asian, whether they are African American or Hispanic or any other person of color, okay? Or they are the tremendous white women businesses as well. We are about making sure that women-owned businesses are able to compete in the supply chain. They have access to the resources. And so I hope we continue to brown the same way that the United States will and the globe will. But I also care about every single business out there. I dare say if I ask you, and I won't, but if I ask you to stand and ask you if you've been to a WBENC conference, we would see many African-American males, Hispanic males standing. Because again, just as we're here to support Lewis and the entire community, we all advocate for our particular group because that's our job. But we believe in every single one of you, and that's what we all need to be about.
So now this question is for Keith and Justin. With your organizations and certifications, why don't you have more folks certified? Why don't you have more folks certified?
Well, I've been sitting up here and listening. At my age, to be considered a new guy is always fun. I'm sorry, hanging out with you old timers. We've been doing this for 4 years, and in that 4 years, the reality for us was we launched in April of 2014. We did every certification by hand. We learned from you two, okay? We were in there. My mentors were WBENC and, the Michigan Minority Supplier Development. We were in their meetings, in their hearings. We saw those stacks of paper. We immediately went to work to building our own online system, and we didn't launch that until June of 2015. So all those beginning ones were all by hand. Every on-site visit was made. All the things that we had to do to establish ourselves. And then what I've learned in these 4 years is that education element that I was talking about earlier. The number of veterans who have come to me and said, why do I need to be certified? Why isn't the federal government enough? Those issues have not gone away. And if anything, we are making a full court press to change that mindset, to work with the organizations here to help me educate their members who also happen to be veterans. I push our veterans to their organizations. And just to make one comment, by the way, I think you all probably know the United States military was the first official organization to integrate, that the highest percentage of females and minorities ever in the United States military is today, okay? I see the female veterans constantly, and we know that that's getting bigger. So we're very proud of the diversity that truly veterans are. So that would be my answer.
Justin, go ahead.
Scott, I'm really glad you asked that question. I'm really not glad he asked that question. I am. I mean, but we get asked that all the time. I think for us, the 1,000 mark was a critical point, and we probably won't ever be the biggest. We just have to be the best at what we do for the constituency that we serve, and we've really ramped up our efforts to identify suppliers. We have a plan in place to have 2020 suppliers by 2020. That is a significant growth trajectory over the next just over 2 years, but we are going to hit it. We have a team that's committed, and I want to just point out 3 of them that are out there: Casey, Jacob, and Lexi. Please stand up. The amazing work they do allows me to come and do this, and we couldn't do it without them. And we have a full team of people that are focused on that. As I mentioned earlier, we have appointed a task force. 2 things that they're looking at. How do we find more opportunities? And I don't mean just RFPs. I mean opportunities to talk about scaling and growth and being able to deliver as a prime, and also about RFPs. And the other one is, how do we find the kinds of suppliers that everyone in this room is looking for? So where are we not that we should be? How do we get there? How do we identify them? It's still an issue for people to identify. And I don't think, again, wacky Justin here, that the current administration has done a lot to alleviate that. In fact, I think they've sort of done just the opposite. And, when we don't have broad swath support, I mean, we have 170 corporate partners. It's not chump change. It's really great. And every one of you, I see many of you, you're wonderful. But there are whole industries where we have very little representation. So it's very difficult to get LGBTBEs to self-identify in an industry where they might not yet feel welcome. So I would just say, look at what we have done in the last few years. It's been amazing. And it's been because not of just the people that work day to day as their full-time jobs at NGLCC, but each and every one of you that volunteer for us, for our partner organizations that help us with identifying businesses within your constituency group that qualify. And we're going to keep trucking along. So is it good enough? No, it's not. Will it be good enough? Yes, we're working on it. That's the reality. So we've just got to keep trucking along, keep adding folks an opportunity, and I'm optimistic we're going to get there.
Scott, can I just make one comment?
You can.
So I'd also encourage you not to look at necessarily the number of certified. That's very important because you do want to know that there's some ability there. But what you're really looking for is, you run certain types of businesses. And so you're looking for certain types of suppliers. And so what you need from us is to get you quality versus quantity. And so, yes, we will be on the larger side. And at the time, right now, they are not. But I would say that for all of us, ask us to think strategically. Ask us to look at your spend categories. Work with us on that so that we can go to industry group meetings. We can find the right suppliers for you. We can help to get that in place so that you do, in fact, then have the things that you have to deliver to your company. And so we do want to all continue to grow the number of BEs we have bringing to you, but do recognize that that sheer number is not the most important thing.
And since this is the NMSDC event, my last official question's for Lewis, and then we're going to let everybody have a closing remark. Lewis, so I think it was Mark Twain that said the rumors of my demise have been greatly exaggerated. There have been some rumors about the demise of NMSDC. What do you have to say about that?
So we're in a room right now that's packed. We had to bring extra chairs in, right? we're happy to be doing that at a conference that broke records for, it was over 6,000 people, almost 900 booths, the largest number of corp. So, the rumors might be a little bit off. Things are on an uptrend. Again, in spirit of transparency, have we had our problems? Absolutely. I'm not going to lie to you to say that we haven't. Hell, I wouldn't be sitting here if we didn't have our problems, right? But. On a serious note, though, from myself, the staff, the board, we are aligned that, that sense of oneness, the we are NMSDC, sorry, Pam,
That's
the we are
okay.
NMSDC mantra is real. It's something we're living, right? From our council presidents to our corporations. It is like a homecoming. Sometimes family fights. Sometimes you got a crazy uncle in the basement. But at the end of the day, you have to come together what's greater for the family. And so we've done that. We're in the process of doing that. The spirit of partnership is real. It's not just talk. It's going to be key to our future. The demographics of the country are showing that, and the support that's there. So don't believe the hype, as Flavor Flav said once.
So let's start with Pam, Keith, Justin. You guys closing remark, and then I'll give you 2 minutes. Pam,
I'll make
and
it
don't be technical.
possibly faster. So WBENC's mantra is join forces, succeed together. And so I'm going to make the statement that one, the WBENC network supports the NMSDC network. We want you to be a strong organization. To Lewis, to all of you, you have our commitment that we will help you to prove the value that this organization shows so that every one of you sitting in this audience will get what you need out of this type of an organization, whether it be Lewis's organization, mine, Keith's, and everybody, right? So everyone. And so I would say we intend to extend Join Forces, Succeed Together to you. And again, I would ask each of you, as you're helping to support that, to recognize that our national offices do not do everything that you get from our network. Our regional partners do a vast majority of the day-to-day work for you. So when you talk about the partner organizations that are out there and you needing to make a decision between the partner organization and the national office, you're actually hurting yourself, okay? Because you need both of those entities to be strong. That is something that Teresa, our executive committee, of which I see many people, many of our corporate members, we all believe that, okay? So remember that we may need to do some things structurally to take some cost out. We still need for you to be able to fund a strong local network and a strong national network. And you have the support of the WBENC network behind you.
I would not be sitting here without the support of the two people to my right. And locally, the Great Lakes WBENC Group, Michelle Richards, and Lewis was the president of Detroit. I tell people, they took pity on me and said, yeah, come here, we'll teach you.
It's not fair.
When you're young and dumb, what do you know? You don't know, I keep saying, well, I didn't know what I didn't know, And unlike most men, I actually need help. So I'm open to your ideas and help, okay? Now, the fact that we're as young as we are as an organization, again, is both that blessing and a curse because, again, we try to make all these things happen. But we have a lot to be grateful for, those we being now the veterans. The announcement of the $1 billion roundtable. What I've said to people about that announcement wasn't just the fact that they named our organization as a certification body, but they said two things that I thought was far more important. One, veterans must be certified, okay? To me, that is a change because we have this horrible concept out in the marketplace called self-certification. That's got to stop. I'm sorry, but I'm a vet. Okay, and I know of the frauds, the lies, the fakes, all the other problems we deal with. In our language, the stolen valor. Guys are running around claiming to be veterans and have all these medals, and we're never even in the military. I'm sorry, that offends me. And I think I have a right to be, okay? Now, the last thing about this is because the $1 billion roundtable said, look, if the veterans are certified by the NVBDC, you can now begin tracking, capture that spend, and that spend will count towards membership in the $1 billion roundtable if you're not there yet, or if you're there, it will include it in that spend total to continue to meet your $1 billion targets. To me, that has changed my market. It has changed the world, if you will, for veteran businesses, and that message is the message that I need to get out to my veterans. They need to understand that what I talked about as the goodwill is not only real, it is now, it is today, and with the support of the companies and the corporations and the groups up here, we're going to be successful. And I'm hoping that when I'm long gone, I got some guy sitting up here saying, 40 years ago, I knew that crazy old Vietnam vet who, put that, and I hope, that's my hope for the future, is that this organization, in the sense of the National Veteran Business Development Council, is here, still working, and still certifying veterans. And for that, thank you.
I guess I'll sort of close where I started, and that's just with a big thank you for being here. Conversations and creating relationships, whether it's with individuals or corporate partners or organizations, is not always easy, but sometimes you run into some really amazing people that help you along that journey, and certainly WBENC was there for us from the beginning. I believe there is a new era. I think the one thing we heard time and time again today out of every one of our mouths was collaboration. There is no turning back at this point. It is about collaboration. And Louis, your call meant a lot to me, and we were transparent, and we, told stories to each other that we will not tell here. Correct. But I appreciate it, and I appreciate the fact that you're doing what you do for the veterans community. My grandfather is a World War II vet. My brother has some of the very symptoms you talked about from the Gulf War, so I appreciate that. And to the corporate partners here, that whether it's our organizations up here or USBLN or Susan Allen's organization or the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce or the Black Chamber of Commerce or all of us that you support, I say thank you. And I want to challenge you with one thing, because each one of you has a network, probably has 2 or 3 networks, the personal network, the professional network, and within those networks, you probably know businesses that would qualify for certification from one or more of our organizations. And I ask you that when you go back, think about that. Should I say so-and-so, have you thought about getting certified by? Because so often, a lot of these answers are right in front of us. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had about how a company might approach someone they think's an LGBT supplier. And so far, we're batting 100%. But, it's about how you have that conversation. And we're here to help to do that. It's important for us. And we want to see that continue. I think the collaboration that here continues, the one we have through the National Business Inclusion Consortium, will continue. And I just, again, will close where I started by saying, thanks for including NGLCC. We're really proud to be here.
So let me close by first kind of echoing what you heard from my friends here on the stage. To Pam's point about that national and local, it's so critical. It's like, pick which one you want. It's like your heart and your brain. Which one can you do without, right? They need to work together to make that happen. You need a strong national and you need a strong regional. You have to have both. And as corporations, think about that strategically, and we need to help you do it in a way that makes sense, in a way that, in our case, you're not getting bombarded from 23 different people asking you the same thing, that we can do it in a way that it works to make sure it happens. To Keith's comments, he's been great to work with. It was an honor, and I saw his heart as they were going on that journey for that. I hope all of you see it here. And please give him the same support and welcome him, as the newest kid on the block, and just still just getting, just getting there. But please welcome him and do that. I hope you understand. And, as we heard from NGLCC, and then I have to laugh here because you've got was it National Business Inclusion? What's it? We're excluded from there right now, but we're going to work on excluded from the inclusion. I know we talked about that's for next Saturday.
So the facts are.
I know.
Am I supposed to feel bad that I haven't
No,
invites in the mail?
invites in the mail. But no, I would hope that inclusion and cooperation is the only way forward for all of us, for every corporation in this room, for every supplier in this room, whatever category or categories of diversity you fall up under. And I think it's not just talk, and for those of you saying, well, that's just you, that's not the rest of NMSDC. No, it's all of us. Right? We realize that's the direction that we need to go. You ask any of our corporate members, they will tell you that. You ask any of our minority-owned businesses, they realize that. And you're going to see it in our actions. I hope you see it in the actions today. If you saw our other most highly attended session today was our $1 Billion Women with Andra Rush, a Native American, Carmen Castillo. Is Andra in here? Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, Andra. I didn't know she was in here. But Carmen Castillo and Janice Bryan Howard. So, that was our second highest attended session after this today. So it is about inclusion and what we're showing, and I hope you understand that's real and it's not lip service on our part. But we're going to be a partner. We want to be a strong partner. As I said, we're going to be unapologetically work hard for the communities that we serve, Native American, Black, Hispanic, Asian. We're going to work hard for them. And it's a big tent for us. There are lots of chambers and lots of everything, and we're really about big tent and participation. And thank you again for all of you being here at NMSDC. And I know Scott's going to do the proper follow-up, but and thank you to my fellow. It means a lot to me that you would grace us with your presence, so thank you.
Thank you.
So we've come to the end, and in 2012, by accident, we invited Lewis and some other folks on the stage to have a real discussion. Said no holds barred, let's throw political correctness out the window, because supplier diversity was in trouble. People were losing their jobs, businesses were failing, and we said if we could just have a real discussion, maybe we could change things. Before my dad passed away, I would complain to him about all these things, and I said, we need something, and he told me, why don't you look in the mirror? And that bigger discussion, by accident, got over 30-some-odd thousand views on YouTube. And most of you that know supplier diversity videos, they are so amazing that if they get 25 views, it's considered a success. We caught magic in a bottle 2 more times, because the bigger discussion 2, 16,000 views, and the bigger discussion 3, another 17 or 18,000 views. Combined with the audiences that we've had over 70,000 people view a discussion on supplier diversity. So what I'm asking you now, in the next couple weeks, we'll be coming out with this bigger discussion 5 on YouTube. And if we want to change things and really send a mandate, I challenge you to let everyone that you know watch this. I challenge you to watch it, and let's try to get those views up there I challenge us to get those views up to 100,000. And then I think we can really show whoever is in wherever position that supplier diversity matters, we care, and we have a mandate, and we have a collective that we can gather and influence behavior. So, that being said, again, I need to say thank you to the partners in this. Fela Meyer, please stand. Alvin O. Williams. Alvin, you still, where's Al? Al snuck out because he knew I was going to call on him again.
And
again,
Scott, thank you too.
Oh, thank you.
I think all of us think you do a wonderful job, and we trusted you to do this with you.
And let's give a big NMSDC thank you to everybody on this panel, because it takes real courage to say some of these things and to pull back the curtain and expose where you're vulnerable and where you're strong and where you have differences of opinion. And so thank you to all the panelists for doing that.